Training now, doing another hour. All right, training objectives. Our training objective is to understand the AGMIS loan scheme. I'm sure you are all familiar with the AGMIS loan scheme. That's the loan that you are trying to access from the NISA Microfinance Bank. So what is AGMIS? We'll break it down for you. We'll try to expose participants to the objectives, components, and processes of achieving the goals of AGMIS, to understand the concept of entrepreneurship, to understand the concept of entrepreneurship, what entrepreneurship is all about, the whole picture, to expose participants to the skills required for entrepreneurship. Okay, I've said that already. And then to prepare participants for a life of entrepreneurship. Because entrepreneurship is not just like a 100-meter dash. It's a marathon, okay? It's a marathon, unless for those who chicken out in no time. If not, when you go into entrepreneurship, it's something that you want to remain in and battling for a very, very long time. Not that the moment you face any little hurdle or challenge and then you just back up, okay? If you have that mindset, then you're not going to go very far with entrepreneurship, okay? So that's what we'll be looking at in terms of entrepreneurship. Okay, the training outline. This is our training outline. First, we'll be defining AGMIS, then its objectives, its components, and then the processes of attaining its goals. We'll be defining entrepreneurship, types of businesses and vocational skills, considerations before starting a business, hurdles in the path of starting a small business, and then sources of funding for small and medium enterprises. Okay, so this is our training outline. We'll be looking in more details at what AGMIS stands for, its objectives. And then, like I said, we'll be defining entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is a large and all-embracing concept. So we'll be breaking it down, defining it. We'll be looking at who's an entrepreneur, what the entrepreneur does, and then the life of entrepreneurship. And then we'll be looking at the various types of businesses that entrepreneurs can go into, and then the vocational skills that entrepreneurs can go into. Then, of course, if you are starting a business, you don't just because Mr. A started a business and he's succeeding, then that you also simply just double into it. There are certain things you need to consider within your environment, okay, that we should be able to explain to you the kind of business you want to go into. Okay, not just that somebody else is doing ABC and then you think you can also go into it. The variables might be very, very different from one community to the other. Okay, the hurdles. Of course, anything we do in life has its own little challenges, its little barriers and hurdles. So we'll be looking at some of the barriers in the part of people who want to go into businesses. And then finally, the sources of funding for small and medium enterprises. Okay, so all of us are in this program today because we are looking for funding, we're looking for financing. Okay, one of the main challenges, one of the major challenges that businesses face is the area of funding. Okay, so what are the sources of funding other than loans? We'll be looking at all of those together. Okay, right. So let's start by defining AGMIS. Sorry, there's something on my screen that I need to get rid of. So just a minute. Let me get rid of what's on my screen now. All right. Why is this? Vicky is always going in and out. What's happening? All right. We're starting with defining AGMIS. So what is AGMIS? The acronym, AGMIS is an acronym. An acronym we all know is a word that we form from the first letters of a sentence or so. Okay, so AGMIS stands for Agribusiness, Small and Medium Enterprises Investment Scheme. Agribusiness, Small and Medium Enterprises Investment Scheme. It is an initiative of the Central Bank of Nigeria aimed at supporting the federal government agenda towards promotion of agricultural businesses and small and medium enterprises as vehicle for sustainable economic development and employment. Right, so AGMIS we all know is a loan scheme floated by NISA Microfinance Bank. But NISA Microfinance Bank itself is owned by the Committee of Bankers and then the CBN, and then of course NIPOST. Committee of Bankers has 50% shares in the bank, CBN has 40%, and NIPOST has 10% of shares in that business. And 10% of NIPOST is in the provision of office space, office accommodation for the NISA Microfinance Bank in all of its branches. So in every branch that we have in NIPOST, in the 774 local government councils, areas in the country, there is supposed to be a NISA Microfinance Bank. It's actually a rural-based bank to try to promote banking within the rural communities and then be able to provide soft and low loans for soft loans for businesses within the rural communities. That's basically what is targeted at. The CBN and Committee of Bankers decided to float this bank and then this scheme, the AGMIS loan scheme, as part of their own contributions to the federal government's agenda on diversification of the economy, and then of course promotion of employment, and then generating economic development. Why is that? The government, we're all aware that one of the government's key pillars today is the diversification of Nigerian economy. You're all aware that Nigeria's economy, of course, is a mono economy, dependent as it were on oil. And each time there is a challenge, there is problem with the oil sector, our economy takes a hit. Okay, a typical case is the COVID-19 pandemic that has hit most international businesses across the entire world. 5 months, the entire world was shut down. All businesses were closed. All industries were closed. International transport across the world, tourism and travels simply shut down. And all of this, most of all of these businesses are driven by oil. Okay, and the moment the oil industry took a hit, the economies of most of the oil-producing countries, OPEC countries, took a hit. And it was within that same period that we had this challenge between Saudi Arabia and Russia when they were flexing their muscles in terms of overproducing oil and then dumping it into the international market. And there was, of course, no market to pick it up. So we saw all pictures of ships, okay, oil tankers loaded on high seas all over the world. There were no off-takers. They were not delivering them anywhere. So we had all the oil, but then nobody was buying because the industries that run on that on oil were all shut down. And of course, what happened? Nigeria's economy also took a serious hit. In fact, the projection was that Nigeria was going to recede again into recession. We had just come out of one recession, but then the thinking was that because of this situation, Nigeria's economy was going to take another hit again, moving into another recession. But of course, we all noticed then that the prices of oil dipped from $60 per barrel to as low as $20 per barrel, which was a very, very serious challenge for most of the economies of the world. Okay, but things are beginning to pick up again. The price of oil is beginning to pick up, and then the economy is picking up gradually until this last few NSAS crisis, and then of course the economy, and then all the lootings and the burnings and things like that, the economy definitely is taking another hit again. So the diversification of the economy is one of the government's own projections on how to move away from the problem of overdependence on oil and one source of revenue, and identified as possible areas of diversification is agricultural businesses, because they found that agricultural business is one area that can employ as many people as possible, area that can take in as many people as possible to go into agricultural business. It's not just, agric is not just about farming, but agric is a whole business, okay, with a lot of value chain to it. And it is this comprehensive value chain that the government wants to see how they can move more and more people into it. And then of course, the second component is SMEs. SMEs are another source of employment and another source of major source of economic development. So these are the areas that the federal government wants to diversify the economy into. So we'll be looking at the various, we'll be breaking down the AGMIS and then the various sectors that comprise this AGMIS loan scheme, investment scheme, and then see their own contribution and how the federal government wants to expand and then exploit the various possibilities in that area. This thing is still showing. This thing is still showing. Let's remove this window away from the shared application. It's just crazy. Okay. Right, sorry, something keeps interrupting my screen, so just trying to clear it out. Right. So that is, I've given a background on the definition of AGMIS. So let's look at the objectives of AGMIS. What are the objectives of AGMIS? To ensure small and medium enterprises have access to finance, to generate the much needed employment opportunities in Nigeria, to boost the managerial capacity of agricultural businesses and SMEs as pipelines of growing economic enterprises, growing enterprises that can become huge organizations, and then to develop agricultural value chain and ensure sustainable agricultural practices. Right. Most of you who are into entrepreneurship or who are involved with SMEs today know that one of the major challenges that we have is that of access to finance. If you want to look for funds today, if you venture into any source of funding today, any source of financing today, and you approach any bank, you know that the interest rates in the banks are monumental. About 26%, they will be charging you interest rate in the range of about 26%, which is very, very exorbitant. I don't know how many people will be able to do any kind of business that charges you 26% interest on the loans, and then you'll be able to make anything out of it, unless, of course, you're not going to, you have some other sources of income that are using paying back on that loan. If not, it definitely is a tough challenge if you attempt to access funds, funding from the bank or microfinance bank at the rate that they currently charge. So financing is a major challenge. And the objectives of AGMIS is how to be able to provide finances, how to be able to provide as minimal finances as possible to SMEs and people who are going into agricultural businesses, to be able to find the finances at very, very accessible and a low income, then a low interest rate, so that they will be able to comfortably go into that same business and at least make something out of it. Okay, that is why they came up with the AGMIS loan scheme, which is collateral free, interest 5% interest rate at least for this year, might be migrating to 9% as for next year. But then from the president's budget speech during his budget presentation the last time, there's every likelihood that it could go up to, it could remain at 95%. Right. Please, can we take just a short break? Can we just take a short break? Let me attend to something quickly. We'll be back with you in a moment, please. Apologies. Right. Thanks. Please accept my profound apologies. Just have a situation in the office I just had to quickly attend to. Apologies, please. So I was talking about the issue of financing, and then small and medium enterprises and agribusiness practitioners. Funding, of course, is a major source of challenge for them. I've talked about the percentage of interest if you want to access funding from microfinance banks or commercial banks. Okay, so the AGMIS loan scheme is came up with the idea so that gap will be able to be filled. The gap of very high interest rate, the gap of easy access to financing. These are the main objectives that AGMIS seeks to bridge. Then secondly, generating the much needed employment opportunities. You're all aware in the country today that employment is a major challenge for us today. We have so many young men and women who have left school. So many of our graduates leaving the universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education, finishing their services, and then entering the job market without any job to do. Okay, that is a major source of problem that we have in Nigeria today. And then, of course, because of the COVID situation, we're all familiar and aware of the issues of layoffs. Many companies have laid off many of their staff because of low productivity, because industrial outputs have been going down. And then, of course, sustaining a big workforce suddenly is a major challenge for most of them. So most of them have taken the easiest way out. We are familiar with banks, for example. Many of the banks, which are ordinarily more profitable, have simply shut down branches. And in shutting down branches, instead of transferring and redeploying their staff, they simply shut down the branch with their staff. Okay, so these are major problems. And what AGMIS seeks to do is to be able to pull many of those young men who are not able to find white-collar jobs into self-employment by providing them these loan facilities for them to go into their own line of businesses, for them to go and try their hands and skills in other lines of businesses. There are many people so many young graduates that I know today who have gone ahead to develop new trades. Some of them have gone, for example, into tailoring. Many have gone into events management. Many have gone into agribusinesses and all of those things. Because government alone cannot be able to provide the finances, cannot be able to provide the employment they require. So that is why you see those kind of issues coming up. And that is where the gap that the AGMIS loan scheme seeks to fill. Okay, so that is a major objective of the AGMIS investment scheme. Then to boost the managerial capacity of agribusinesses and SMEs as pipelines for growing enterprises. The training that we are going currently seeks to provide that managerial skills which people will require in running their own businesses. The topics that we'll be presenting in this 5 days training are such that will help you, at least with basic managerial skills, basic management skills that you require in running small businesses. Topics like from tomorrow, we'll be taking topics like feasibility studies and business plan. I'll be looking at financial planning and basic bookkeeping. We're looking at effective sales and then marketing strategies, business law, and then of course registration of business and ease of doing business issues in the country. So these are areas that are quite beneficial, be quite beneficial to all of you who are attending this program in the area of growing their businesses. Since many of those who have attended this course have called us to appreciate the effort we have made, and then of course opening up their vistas in the area of providing them more information and knowledge with regards to how to manage their businesses. And it's quite beneficial in all cases. Then to develop agricultural value chain. Like I said, agric is not just about crop farming. Agric is an entire business with numerous value chains. Okay, it's a value chain in agric really that is even more profitable than the raw materials that we simply generate in agriculture. Okay, that's the value addition. That's the additional input that we put in our agricultural produce going forward, not just producing raw materials and then sending into international market. For example, we've seen situations where we have these large cocoa plantations in the country. We simply harvest the cocoa beans and then send them abroad to the industries in Europe and America. And then they go there producing chocolate and all manners of teas and then bringing them back without us adding any value. So we sell them at cheap rate, and then what we bring back as import are more expensive. So the whole idea of developing the agri-value chain is for us to be able to put some additions, some value additions on whatever it is that we are sending out. So that if we're exporting at a much higher price, okay? So that by the time we're bringing in, importing those same items, at least there is some measure of parity in terms of what we expect, what we earn in exporting, and then what we spend in imported finished products. So that's what the agri-value chain is all about. Okay. All right. All right. So let's look at the components of AGMIS now. Okay, we have defined AGMIS as agribusiness and small and medium enterprises as a vehicle of economic development and employment. So let's look at the agribusiness component of AGMIS. Okay, remember we said AGMIS consists of agribusiness and then the SMEs. Okay, so let's look at the agribusiness component of AGMIS. In 2019, agriculture contributed around 21.91% to Nigeria's GDP, surpassed only by industry at 27.38% and services sector at 49.73%. Okay, that is a massive contribution, 21.91% to Nigeria's GDP. Okay, although Nigeria depends heavily on the oil sector, I've told you about Nigeria's dependence on the oil sector. Yet Nigeria is predominantly an agricultural society with approximately 70% of the population engaged in agricultural production at subsistence level. Okay, Nigeria derives 95% of its export earnings and about 70% of government revenue from the oil sector. That is how dependent we are on the oil sector. But when you talk in terms of GDP contribution, the petroleum sector's contribution to Nigeria's GDP is less than 10%. Okay, in 2015 it was just 9%. In 2016 it was just 8%. Compared to agri, that is 21.91%. So you can see how massive the contribution of agri is compared to the oil industry that is the major revenue earner for the country. So there is a point to be made, therefore, when government seeks to emphasize the need for more investments in agriculture and diversifying from the oil sector. It is this trend that the government wants to leverage on with its renewed focus on agricultural sector in an attempt to diversify the economy from oil. So what we're saying basically here is that because of the massive contribution of agri to the GDP, okay, government wants to leverage on that sector, okay, by refocusing its attention on agri and diversifying the economy away from oil in the agricultural sector. A sector that contributes to 21.91% of your GDP definitely needs that kind of attention, okay? And this is what informed the current government's effort and devoted energy initiatives like the Anchor Borrowers Program, okay, and now the AGMIS. I'm sure you're all aware of the Anchor Borrowers Program. The Anchor Borrowers Program is another initiative of the CBN. Here, its target is to support farmers, especially rice farmers, with soft loans and then inputs and implements. Okay, and of course, that initiative is yielding a lot of fruit in places like Kebbi State, in places like Lagos State, Ogun State, Anambra, Ebonyi, Benue, and a host of other countries where there is massive rice cultivation and rice farming today. Today, Nigeria is the largest producer of rice in Africa, okay, and then the 8th largest producer of rice in the world. But previously, you're all aware of our situation. We were the net importers of rice, almost empowering and enriching countries like Thailand, like Myanmar, like Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, and a host of these Far East countries, because we imported almost all of our rice from these locations, okay? And countries like Thailand, Myanmar, Pakistan and Bangladesh were depending more on Nigeria's importation of rice to boost their economy and then to provide employment for their people. But what of us? We have all the fields, we have the land, we have the resources, we have the men. You know? And that is what drove the government to decide to ban the importation of rice. And okay, with the conviction that, look, we also have the land to be able to produce the rice that we can eat, and then of course be able to export it also. And that is yielding result. Today, most of the rice eaten in Nigeria is produced locally here. Okay, so there's always this talk about local rice, and it is becoming predominant. And more Nigerians are going into that area. Okay, buying and then of course farming, cultivating rice. Okay, and then we'll have these massive rice milling factories that have come up across the country. Okay, we have them in places like Lagos, where Lagos is collaborating with KB State today. We have massive rice milling facilities in Anambra State, where organizations like Charis has this massive rice milling facilities. Anambra State government itself, Ebonyi State itself. So these are all responses to the federal government's initiative in the areas of Anchor Borrowers program. And then the agri loan scheme is also targeted in the same area, because one of his emphasis is on agri businesses. And the hope is that more and more people who are trying to access this loan facility will also go into agriculture and be able to build on the agricultural businesses and then the value chain. In fact, running this program and then of course developing a business plan for many of the participants, we've seen that many people are actually going into agricultural businesses, and many of them are going into rice farming, for example, today. Okay, and then of course the federal government seems to have some real bias, the bank rather seems to have some real bias in supporting people who are going into the agricultural business area more than any other sector. So that is what the government is trying to do. That is what the AGMIS loan scheme seeks out to do. Right. So this drive is a recognition of the contribution of agriculture to economic growth and development in providing food for the expanding population, increasing the demand for industrial products, providing local foreign exchange earnings for import of capital goods, increasing social income, in providing employment and improving the welfare of citizens. So this basically summarizes all of the things that I have said so far. It simply is re-emphasizing the role and then the contribution of agri to economic growth and development, okay, in the area of providing food for our population. One of the objectives of the diversification and concentration of attention on agriculture is that every country needs to be able to feed its population. There's no way a country with about over 200 million people can be dependent on importation of food. There's no way we'll be able to support that. There's no way we'll be able to have the resources and the finances to continue to import what we eat. Every country needs to be able to feed its people. A country that fails to be able to feed its people is definitely doomed for a major problem ahead. So diversifying into agriculture, building the food security that we require, is one of the things that the drive in agriculture is doing for our country. Of course, it is also helping increasing the demand for industrial products, because all of the products that the farm produce that we produce today go into feeding the industrial sector. Okay, I did talk about the agricultural value chain, and then the fact that the value chain is such that the raw materials are now value have been added to it. There is a second level before it is being exported. Okay, no matter what happens, raw materials are not just produced and then exported. There is value addition. Something is added to it before it is exported. Providing local foreign exchange. As we export this agricultural produce, of course, the foreign exchange is also used in importing capital goods for our industrial sector. So it's a two-way drive. Okay, we don't just deplete our foreign reserves, foreign exchange reserves, but the earnings from agricultural businesses, the foreign exchange earnings from agricultural now gets diverted into importing capital goods for our industrial manufacturing sector. And then, of course, the social income that has come with this. As more and more people are being employed in the agricultural sector, of course, more income is being generated. Okay, if I have had stories of what's happening in places like KB State today, many of the young men who were previously running around the streets doing menial jobs like shoe shine and cobblers and things like that, today have gone back to the farms, especially during farming season, rainy season farming, or fadama irrigation farming, for example. They go back and farm and they earn a lot of money. Many of them are buying cars, machines, sending themselves to Hajj and places, pilgrimages and things like that. And some even marry more women. So those are some of the kind of social income that has come from the agricultural businesses, and of course the massive employment that has been able to provide. And then naturally across board there will be improvement in the welfare of citizens, because they now have more income available, readily available income for them to be able to indulge themselves a bit in the various things that they do. It is these gains that explain the need to support the growth and expansion of agri and agro-allied industry and its associated value chains. So basically, we are summarizing and saying that the gains from the expansion in agri and agro-allied industry needs to be supported, and that is why the Committee of Bankers and CBN came up with this initiative to try and see how they can assist the government in the areas of diversification of the economy, employment generation, and the like. Okay, right. So let's look at. Right. Now let's look at the second component of the AGMI's loan scheme, the SMEs, small and medium enterprises. The SMEs are the second component of AGMI. So I've looked at the agribusiness, now the SMEs. The SME sector is the backbone of major developed economies. It's the backbone of major developed economies, as well as important contributor to employment, economic, and export growth. Okay. What we're saying basically here is that it's not just in Nigeria. Across the world, the developed economies of the world, major developed economies of the world. Ours is still a developing economy. But even the major developed economies of the world, the SME sector is a backbone of most of these countries. Okay, it is a major contributor to employment and then their economic growth. When we talk about SMEs are, like we say, from young accounts grow mighty oaks. Most of the major corporations that we know today, most of the major companies and major employers of labor we find across the world today, and most of the countries with companies with the topmost revenue earnings today started as SMEs. Okay, examples are given of companies like the Apple company, for example, the Microsoft company, for example, the Facebook company, for example, that just started in 2004. All of them started as SMEs. Okay, for Microsoft and the Apple company, they actually started in the garages of the parents of the main people that started these SMEs. Okay, Facebook, for example, started in the university dormitory, the dormitory of Harvard University by Mark Zuckerberg and his friends. Okay, so that is how they start. But today, these companies are major revenue earners. In the last few classes, I've given the example of the Apple company, for example, the Apple company computers, and not just the computers now, but because the Apple company consists of the computers, the iPhones, the iPads, the iPods, and iWatch, and all of those things. Cumulatively, they generate a revenue of about $21 trillion annually. Compared to Nigeria, a whole country, ours is about $448 billion per annum. Okay, so when you make the comparison, just one company compared to a country, and see what we are able to the differential in terms of the revenue generation. Okay. Meanwhile, that company, Apple, for example, Apple Corporation, is just one business. You haven't talked about the Microsoft here. You haven't talked about Amazon yet. You haven't talked about Facebook yet. All these are started as SMEs, and they have turned out to be major corporations today. And that is what the federal government is looking at. According to the Nigerian SME survey by PwC, 2019, in Nigeria, SMEs contribute 48% of national GDP and account for 96% of businesses and 48% of employment. So we can compare this with agri. This is even doubles the contribution of agri to the national GDP. We've looked at agri contributes 21.91%. The SMEs contribute 48% to the national GDP. compare that to the petroleum sector that contributes less than 10%. So when you look at these two sectors, the agri and then the SME sector, you know how massive those two sectors are and why the government is looking at those areas for purposes of diversification of the economy, okay, because of its GDP contribution, because of its employment potential. Okay, 96% of businesses are SMEs, 48% of employment opportunities are SMEs. Okay, so those are massive areas to be toyed around with. Okay, SMEs in Nigeria constitute a total of 17.1 million enterprises. They account for about 50% of industrial jobs and nearly 90% of the manufacturing sector in terms of enterprises. So that says it all. Okay, 50% of industrial jobs are SME based. Okay, and 90% of the manufacturing sector in terms of enterprises are SME based. So that's how massive the SME sector is in Nigeria. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, in collaboration with the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency, SMIDEN, the SME sector in Nigeria is strategically positioned to absorb up to 80% of jobs, improve per capita income, increase value addition to raw material supply, improve import earnings, enhance capacity utilization in key industry, and unlock economic expansion and GDP growth. So these are massive figures that we are seeing. 80% has capacity to absorb 80% of jobs. So when we're talking about unemployment in Nigeria, and then we're looking at how do we provide the opportunity, or how do we open up the market for young Nigerians to go in to gain employment, SME is the way to go. Okay, because if we're able to harness it, if we're able to develop it, 80% of the jobs that we are looking for in Nigeria can be provided by the SME sector. And that is what is driving the Committee of Bankers and CBN into promoting the SME, encouraging more and more people to come take this facility to be able to go into entrepreneurship and small businesses and small and medium enterprises to be able to absorb and then recruit some people. Because the whole idea behind this loan scheme is that if you are a startup and you are given 5 million naira, you are expected to be able to employ one person. Okay, and if you're an existing business and you are given 10 million, you're expected to be able to employ at least 2 people. Okay, so if each and every one of you who is registered in this program today, for example, is able to access the loan, the expectation is that there are like 20 of you. The expectation is that not less than 60 people should be able to be employed by those who participate in this program today. So that is the drive, that is the aspiration of this AGNIS loan scheme. Okay, so that is the direction as it were to go. So it is this potential which the government wants to explore and expand, but it realized that there exists a missing middle, which is that SMEs still find it hard to access funds. So what we're saying basically is that the federal government has seen the potential of the agribusiness, of the SMEs, okay, in terms of diversification of the economy, in terms of employment generation. But it realized that there is a missing middle. And what is this missing middle? The missing middle is the access to funds, okay? The missing middle is the access to funds. If we're able to explore and expand the agribusiness and SME, the potentials are vast, okay? 21.91% in terms of GDP contribution agri, 48% in terms of GDP contribution from SMEs, and then over 50% of industrial jobs, and then the potential to be able to absorb up to 80% of jobs in SMEs. Okay, so this potential is mass, but the problem is the missing middle, which is access to funds. So what is the government's decision then? So the AGNIS loan scheme is therefore government's response and solution to the missing middle, providing affordable and easily accessible funds to this vibrant and explosive sector with a high potential to be the major backbone of Nigeria's economic development. So the AGNIS loans, the government's own conclusion and response, okay, to the missing middle, to how we can grow the economy, how we can diversify the economy, is through the AGNIS loan scheme. And this is its own response in providing affordable and easily accessible funds. Okay, that is the missing middle. AGNIS loan was brought about, was initiated to be able to fill that gap the gap of the missing middle, the gap of access to funds, okay, by providing affordable and easily accessible funds that is collateral free, that has low interest rate, okay, and that where you don't need any guarantor or anybody to come and shorty you, or you need to drop any paper as collateral or whatsoever. No, your BVN is the only thing that stands here for you as a collateral. That is the government's finding, and that is the government's solution to the issue of funding of SMEs. Okay, so that basically is what the AGMIS loan scheme sets out to do. Okay, government solution and response to the issue of finances, to be able to take advantage and expand those key areas of agribusiness and SMEs. If it's able to do that, then that explosive section will also grow, has a high potential of being the major, like the SMEs in other countries. This will also be the major backbone for us in Nigeria today. Okay, all right. So what is entrepreneurship? Before we now move to the second section, I will finish with the first section, which is basically an introductory aspect of entrepreneurship, and then the AGMIS loan scheme itself. Well, now the next section is we are going into the entrepreneurship. But before we go into that section, I'll open the class so that if you have any questions to ask, you can ask the question so that we have some general conversation before we move to the second segment of this training on entrepreneurship. Okay, so we're done with the introductory part, finding out what AGMIS is all about, what its components are, and why the federal government is promoting it. And now the floor is open. You unmute your mic. If you have any questions to ask, you can ask the question, and then we can proceed from there. Thank you very much. All right, any questions? Techno 904. You have any question?
Hello?
Yeah, hello. Yeah, who is on? Your line is cracking.
The source of fund.
Sorry, your line is cracking. Who is? Can you introduce yourself, please?
Speaking. Speaking. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's cracking.
In the source of fund, you have just explained as the major barrier to growth. Hello?
Go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Toluhi.
Hello?
Go ahead. I can hear you.
Hello?
Go ahead, Toluhi.
Okay, now, immediately someone passes through this kind of training, and such money is given. Now, it's expected to meet up with a particular target. Now, what if at the minute the profit you are expected to make, or you are expecting to make, you do not make it at the time schedule, and such the organization still help you to extend the time of the payment of such money?
Sorry, maybe you have to go to the chat box and then write something out for us, because I can't hear you. Sorry, maybe Tolu, maybe you go to the chat box and try to draw something. Your line is not legible at all. All right, any other question? Any other question? Mr. Jakara, you have a question, sir? You unmute your mic, sir. Unmute your mic. Your mic is muted. All right. Okay.
Yeah, there's no question to ask. Your lecture is very interesting and
Right, sir.
very educating.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Emmanuel Ode, you've raised your hand. I can see you've raised your hand. Go ahead, Emmanuel Ode. Yeah, Emmanuel Ode, go ahead. You raise your hand. Mr. Ode, go ahead. You don't have a question? All right. If you don't have a question, then we'll move on. Mr. Emmanuel Ode, you have a question? I can see you raised your hand. Christopher, are you back? All right. So if there are no questions, we'll go back and then continue with the lecture. If you have any question, of course, you can go to the chat box and then you ask your question there. Right. Okay. So let's go back. Sharing. All right, so we're back in the class. All right, so we're back in the class now, and then the question is, we ask is, what is entrepreneurship? What is entrepreneurship? Can anybody help me? Can go to the chat box quickly if you have any question. What is entrepreneurship? Give me one line, one word, two word answer. What is entrepreneurship? I'm checking the chat box to see if there's any response. What's entrepreneurship? No response from the chat box. Right, so let's go ahead and look at what is entrepreneurship. Defining entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is the process of starting and running a business enterprise. Straightforward, the process of starting and running a business enterprise. It involves investing capital in resources like people and in development of products and services to create viable commercial enterprise. Okay? It is the capacity and willingness to develop, organize, and manage a business venture along with many of its risks in order to make a profit. So any business that you start running, okay, is already an entrepreneurial activity. Okay, so all of us that are in this training today, we have the mindset of starting and running a business. The moment we start that process, we start running that business, already we're into entrepreneurial activity. Okay, it involves investing capital in resources like people. The human being is a resource. Okay, that's what we call it, human resources. The human being is a resource. So if you invest your capital, invest your money in people in order to develop and create services, you are already going into entrepreneurship. Of course, developing those products and services into a viable commercial enterprise. That is already an entrepreneurial activity. It is a capacity and willingness to develop, organize, and manage a business venture, along with its many risks in order to make a profit. So what we're saying basically is that anybody that starts a business, okay, that is ready to take the risk that comes with it, and then with the profit motive is always there. And anything that you do, there is a risk to it. Okay, so if you take that, if you take that bold step, take that risk, okay, into starting a business with the hope of making profit and then the risk that comes with it. That is an entrepreneurial activity. Entrepreneurship goes with a profit motive, and then it comes with its own risk. Okay, so when you attempt any of those things, you want to start a commercial business enterprise, and then you are willing to take the risk to make that it is characterized by innovation and risk taking. And it is an essential part. It's an essential part of a nation's ability to succeed in an ever-changing and increasingly competitive global market. Okay, so entrepreneurial spirit is about innovation. It's about risk taking. Okay, these are two very, very important components: innovation, creating, innovating, and developing. All these are issues that drive the entrepreneurial spirit. And then, of course, the risk element is always there. Okay, it is those who are willing and ready to take those risks that are able to grow their economy, grow their country. Okay, and most of the world, across the world today, we see all manners of competition among countries, where citizens involving themselves in all manners of entrepreneurial activities to be able to stay and compete. Okay, the world is about competition today. Today, the challenge, the problem that we see between the US and China is about entrepreneurial spirit. Okay, we see the Chinese virtually in all spheres of life today. Okay, they are now the second largest economy in the world, challenging the US. And in a couple of years to come, the belief is that the Chinese will overtake the US. And all of it is about entrepreneurship. Okay, it's their young men and women that are developing their industry, their enterprises, and building that niche for them. The Chinese have been able to take over 800 million people out of poverty within three decades, within the span of 30 years. Okay, by the time you look at the Chinese Revolution, right from the time of Xi Jinping to date, it's a major drift away from the Chinese we used to know, where poverty ravaged, where the communist system held down so many people. But today they have been able to modernize this in such a way that the communist system is fast becoming a capitalist communist system. Okay, and then of course the kind of things that comes out of China. Today China is all over Africa, across most of the world, providing their services. Okay, building infrastructure, massive infrastructure, supporting them. In fact, even the US today. And that is what entrepreneurship is all about innovation, about creating, and then of course, taking the risks that go with it. Okay, so that is what happens when entrepreneurship drives a nation and drives a people. Okay, so who is an entrepreneur? We've looked at entrepreneurship. Let's define who is an entrepreneur. Will you describe yourself as an entrepreneur today? What is it that you do that will make you be classed as an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is a person who takes the risk of investing his money, his time, and passion in development of a business or several business enterprises. So that is it. That basically defines what an entrepreneur is. If you are ready to take a risk of investing your money, your time, and passion in any business, you are already an entrepreneur. You can be defined as an entrepreneur. You can be categorized as an entrepreneur. Because anybody who is willing to, what you're trying to do now, take a loan facility, for example, that is your money, okay? You're taking a loan, okay? And you're willing to invest it. You're willing to give up your time, because they say time is money, time is precious. You're willing to give up your time. And then the passion that drives whatever it is that you want to go into. Okay, is it fashion design you want to go into? The passion that drives you, okay, into those areas. Is it poultry business? The passion that drives you, that pushes you to go and borrow money to go into that business and give all of your time for that. That is what drives an entrepreneur. Is a person who is willing to take the risk of investing his money, his time, and passion in the development of a business. That is what entrepreneurship is all about. Okay, so who is an entrepreneur? This is the definition of entrepreneur that always trips me. An entrepreneur is someone who jumps off a cliff and builds a plane on the way down. He jumps off a cliff and builds a plane on the way down. That's literally a definition of entrepreneurship. We all know what a cliff is like. Okay, a cliff is normally a very, very massive gorge, okay, high up, and then with the river, the ravine, and then of course there's the chances that there's a river flowing. So anybody that is willing to take the risk of taking the leap from that kind of cliff, taking the risk of jumping off a cliff on the way down, builds a plane. That is an entrepreneur. That it simply says that anybody who is willing to take a risk of doing something that is considered very, very dangerous and detrimental to his health and livelihood is an entrepreneur. And along the way is able to come up with something concrete. That is an entrepreneur. Okay? A typical case of entrepreneur, for example, is the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers typify, they are typically entrepreneur. We all know the story of the Wright brothers. They had the first set of people to build an airplane. You can see on this page, for example, on the monitor, their first contraption, which is what the very first airplane that was created in the world. Okay, that is the Wright brothers. Nobody believed that any object, heavy object, can fly in the air. Okay, you couldn't believe that any object with massive metal construction would be able to fly in the air. But the Wright brothers were able to defy that. And that is why today we have aeroplanes, massive jumbo jets across the world today, bridging the entire world, so that thousands of miles are able to cover within hours. That is the vision of the Wright brothers. Okay? They typify a typical entrepreneur that took a leap, a jump from a cliff, and on their way down, they built an aeroplane. On our screen also is Elon Musk. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Elon Musk. But Elon Musk is typically our modern day Wright brothers. Elon Musk is a South African, South African American today. He is the founder of SpaceX. SpaceX is an aeronautic engineering company that specializes in building rockets that take people to the space. Okay, mostly we are all aware that that the space program is driven by countries, with heavy investment by countries like America and East NASA program, the Russians with the cosmonaut program, Chinese, for example, the UAE, India and Pakistan have all joined the race to go in to send people to space. Okay, but Elon Musk is the first individual to embark on such a mission, and recently his spacecraft, okay, the SpaceX, was able to take astronauts to the International Space Center in the orbit, and then they stayed there for over 6 months before returning them to Earth. And his aspiration, his vision, is to be able to take human beings to the Mars, to go and live in Mars, to occupy Mars. Okay, and then of course, as a short-term program also, to be able to shuttle tourists to International Space Center, to the orbit, to go for tourism, and then come back to Earth. That is what drives Elon Musk. Elon Musk also is such a vibrant and maverick entrepreneur. He's the one behind Tesla Motors today. I'm sure you're all familiar with Tesla cars. Tesla cars are driven by electricity, not petrol, not petroleum engines. Okay, and then the aspiration, of course, is because of climate change, and then of course the hydrocarbon in the universe. They are trying to champion less of fuel cars that are polluting the atmosphere, causing all manners of damage to the ozone layer, and then the issue that we have today about the pollution, air pollution, and things like that. If we are familiar with China in the past few years, before we started wearing masks, you see people wearing masks all over China. Because of the level of pollution, the air quality was so low and so poor that people had to be wearing masks on a day-to-day basis. Okay, and then of course the solution to that situation is in the area of finding vehicles that no longer use petrol and that emit all the monoxide that pollute the space today. Okay, that is what Elon Musk is championing, and that's why we keep saying that. That's why there's a proverbial the prediction, and then of course one of the main drivers of the diversification of the economy away from the oil sector, because the projection is that in the next 30 years, by 2050, for example, by 2050, most cars in the world will no longer use fuel, will no longer use petroleum, but will be using electricity or water. And already it is being it is being done. Many cars, millions of cars are produced by Tesla and some other electric cars in China that are gradually coming in to replace petroleum cars. And even in Nigeria, in the course of this pandemic, in the course of this NSAS protest, we hear the federal government, so the recent increase in the price of petroleum, we hear the federal government talking about that conversion of vehicles into using those using gas today. And then of course, opening gas stations where most of our vehicles will now be fed with gas for purposes of transportation. So these are all gradual movement away from petroleum cars, petroleum-based vehicles and automobiles, and into other areas like electricity, and then the hydrogen, and water-driven vehicles. And that is the aspiration, and that is the direction that the world is going today. Okay, so who is an entrepreneur? Who is an entrepreneur? We're looking at, again, who is an entrepreneur? This is the last definition of who an entrepreneur is. Entrepreneur is any individual who starts a new business venture, a company. He arranges the deals and takes the risk in order to make profits or social change. So this is the same with all of the others. Okay? The key words again remain risk-taking, profit-making, or creating social change. Risk-taking and profit motive or social change. Companies like Facebook, what they've done in the world is creating social change because they've been able to bring the world together. Communication have been made so easy that today people are able to reach each other in a matter of minutes. Somebody posts something on Facebook and immediately it's liked or commented on. That is social change. And with that, the power of mass media, social media, for example, we're able to see the level of mobilization. We could just see it in the NSAS protests that we just had in the country. Young men using social media, creating the change that we need to make, and then bringing to the attention of the entire world the need to change the way that we are being policed in this country today. That is the power of social media. That is the power of things like Instagram, Facebook, and the rest of them. That is what entrepreneurship is able to do, okay? Profit making, and then of course the social change. But then there is always the risk factor that goes with it, right? So what does an entrepreneur do? What does an entrepreneur do? As an entrepreneur, what do you do? What drives you into doing what you do? Okay, what is it that informs you are going into doing what you are doing presently or what you intend to do? An entrepreneur identifies a need that no existing businesses addresses and determines a solution for that need. Simple. That's what an entrepreneur does. Entrepreneur finds that within a community, within an environment, there is a missing gap. There is a vacuum. There is something that other companies are not addressing. There are vacuum, there are gaps that are not being filled, and he does something about filling that gap. Entrepreneurial activity includes developing and launching new businesses and marketing them, often with the goal of selling them to turn a profit. An entrepreneur who regularly launches new businesses, sells them, and then starts new businesses is a serial entrepreneur. Additionally, although the term entrepreneur is often associated with startups and small businesses, any founder of a successful household business began as an entrepreneur. I'll give you the example of the Facebooks, the Microsoft, the Apple computers and Apple company. All those started as small businesses, but today are successful household names. Okay, so an entrepreneur is somebody who, sees a gap, a vacuum, and fills it. There's this example I like to give. Okay, you come into a community and find that within the community, people are still drawing their water. They are drinking water from streams. They go to the stream miles away to draw their water. You see young men and women and children going to stream very, very early hours of the day. And then you begin to wonder, why are people drawing water and drinking from the streams? It's the same streams they bath, it's the same stream they wash, and it's the same stream they draw water for their cooking and for their drinking. And then, of course, because of that, there's disease prevalence in the community. Because of that, there is challenge of diseases and all manners of ailments within the community. It's because of the water that they drink, diseased water that they drink. And then, of course, your entrepreneurial spirit hits you and say, look, there is something that I can do. I can dig a borehole and provide water to the community by either building a company that produces sachet water or bottled water. The moment you do something like that, you have done what every entrepreneur is expected to do, seeing a gap that no business is fulfilling, is filling, and then you go ahead to fill that business, to fill that gap. That is entrepreneurship. That's what an entrepreneur does. He sees a gap and fills it. Okay, you come to a community, you find that most of the bread eaten in that community comes from over 2 kilometers away. I say, no, but you have so many people who are eating bread within that community, and then you set up a bakery. That is seeing a gap, a vacuum, and filling it. That is what an entrepreneur does. Okay, I think that's clear enough. That is what an entrepreneur does. Okay, so let's give some examples of successful entrepreneurs. I've talked about the Apple computer. You're all familiar with Steve Jobs, I'm sure. He's the late tech leader who started the Apple computer in a garage with his friend called Steve Wozniak. Okay? And today it has grown up to be a dominant tablet, smartphone, and computer company. Okay? Steve Jobs and his friend Wozniak started this computer business in the garage of their parents. They saw the gap, they saw the need for computers, microcomputers. And they started the process of building those microcomputers. Along with Bill Gates. Bill Gates is the creator of Microsoft. Okay? He's today one of the wealthiest individuals in the world today. He also saw the need, okay, for microcomputers instead of the massive mainframe computers that IBM was building at that time that filled up a whole office space in an office complex. In fact, Bill Gates approached IBM and told them that his vision is to be able to place a microcomputer on the desks of every office and in every home within a decade. And IBM said it was not possible. IBM said it was not possible, okay, and turned him down. But he was not deterred. He didn't give up. He did with the rejection. What he did was to go ahead and build the microcomputer. And today, within the decade as he projected, we have computers in every home and in every office. Today, there's no office that we go to in the world, I want to believe, unless maybe in the remotest part of the world, that you will find a manual typewriter or electric typewriter. Wherever it is that you go, computers have taken over. Today, we have tablets, we have laptops, we have the desktops, and the desktops are becoming as miniature, as minimal, as macro as possible, as mini as possible. Okay, that is the power of entrepreneurship. That's the power of vision. Okay, be able to visualize something and then, of course, go ahead to do it. Today, Bill Gates is one of the richest person, actually the #1 richest person in the world today. He has left the Microsoft company to others to run, having established it to the level that it is, and it has moved on to other areas in medicine, for example, where he is supporting areas of vaccination, development of vaccine. Nigeria recently left the group of those who had suffered massively from polio diseases on account of the effort of people like Bill Gates. Of course, he's investing massively in anti-malaria vaccine, and of course, today in the COVID-19 pandemic, he's one of those championing the cause of production of vaccine today for COVID-19, even though most of his effort is being villainized across the world today because they believe that he has some kind of ulterior motive to it, especially in Africa, where the thinking is that he wants to reduce the population of Africa. For what purpose, only God knows, but he is doing a lot of good for the world today. Okay, I've talked about Elon Musk already. He's the founder of SpaceX, an aerospace and rocket manufacturing company, of course, and his Tesla cars, the electric car and solar panel and solar products company. Today, also, he's also putting billions of his money into philanthropic activities across the world. Okay, so these are pictures of Steve Jobs. We lost him in 2011 as a very young man. Today, Bill Gates is still around, waxing strong, and as I said, supporting the world in other areas, especially in the areas of medicine. And again, Mark Zuckerberg. I've spoken several of Mark Zuckerberg. He's the co-founder and owner of Facebook. Okay, he saw the need for interpersonal communication among people, and then they developed the social networking service, Facebook. from his Harvard University dormitory to show you how small they normally start. Those Apple and Microsoft from the garage of their homes, and then Mark Zuckerberg with his Facebook from Harvard University dormitory. Okay, and that was just recently in 2004. 5 years after we started this program in 2009, over 500 million users were already latched onto Facebook. Today, over 2 billion users are on that same program, okay, with over 6 billion in revenue. That is massive for a very young man who is just about 33 years old, okay? He started this program in his early 20s. Today, he is a multi-billionaire who is also putting the bulk of his wealth, over 90% of his wealth, to public use. Okay. So that's what some of the successful international businessmen, entrepreneurs that we have. Okay, of course, Nigeria cannot be left out. Our own successful entrepreneurs. I'm sure you are all familiar with these faces: Tony Elumelu, Adenuga, Dangote, Tedola, and Mrs. Awoshika. All of them are Nigeria's example of successful entrepreneurs. Tony Elumelu made his fortune in banking and is today one of those championing the cause of entrepreneurs, supporting entrepreneurs from across Africa, providing them with seed money, and then encouraging them to go into their own line of entrepreneurship. Adenuga, we know his massive investment in telecommunication, the oil sector. Dangote, of course, his story is well known to all of us. Okay, he started as a young man who were told sold sweet with his pocket money when he was in primary school, and then later in life took a loan of about 500,000 naira for his uncle to finance his business. Today, Dangote is Africa's richest man with vast interest in cement, sugar, oil and gas, and a host of other businesses, okay, and expanding. Tony Elumelu, like I said, made his fortune in banking. And today, he's empowering so many young entrepreneurs across Africa, so that tomorrow we'll also be able to have our own Mark Zuckerbergs. Okay, on a year-to-year basis, Tony Elumelu brings together young men from across Africa, gives them seed money of about $5,000 to $20,000, and encourages them to go into the areas of entrepreneurship that they fancy, okay, that their passion drives them into. And many of them, every year they come back together, sharing their stories, showing the world what they've been able to do with the seed money given to them. It is our hope that in the next decade or so, more of these entrepreneurs will be those that we'll be talking about across the continent today, like we do of Dangote and the rest of them today. All right, on our screen, it's another successful young entrepreneur in Nigeria today. I don't know how many of you are familiar with him, but many of you are familiar with his products, because on the screen, I was seeing some of his products being displayed. His name is Nnamdi Ezigbo. Okay, Nnamdi Ezigbo is the founder and CEO of Slot Nigeria Limited and co-founder of Techno and Phoenix phone brands. They are the fastest selling indigenous mobile phones in Nigeria today, indigenous phones, not your iPhones and Samsungs and the rest of those things, but these are indigenous to Nigeria. And the person behind it is Nnamdi Ezigbo. Okay, I'm sure many of you are familiar with, okay, of course, like I said, I saw many people using the Techno on the platform just now. Okay, that is the outcome of Ezigbo's investment. Ezigbo's story is typical of most Nigerian young men. Okay, on finishing his education and his service, he went around searching for white-collar jobs, but he couldn't get any. So what he ended up doing was to take up an apprenticeship with a computer repair shop. Okay, as an apprentice. Okay, on completion, he also set up his own shop, and then migrated from repairing computers to selling cell phones. In the course of doing that, in the case of selling cell phones, he found many Nigerians coming into the shops with 2-3 phones at a time. And then it occurred to him, so instead of people carrying so many phones at a time, why can't we produce a cell phone that has dual SIM? So that if there's no network in one, at least there will be in another. And that will save people from the tax of carrying so many cell phones at the same time. Okay, and that is what drove him. So what he did was to approach Nokia phone company, but Nokia turned him down and said, no, we would rather prefer selling as many phones as possible than to develop one that has dual SIMs. Okay, they will make more money selling more handsets than reducing the number of handsets because they now have 2 dual SIMs. Okay, so he approached a young Chinese chap who had just left his work with a mobile phone company, and the guy bought into the idea, and that is how they set up a company producing techno that has dual SIMs. Okay, of course, techno is relatively cheap compared to the other imported smartphones, and they readily available and accessible to most Nigerians. And of course, after seeing the massive market they were able to, they now decided how to build the Infinix model. Infinix model is simply a little bit more cheaper than the Techno, okay, to be able to reach out as many people as possible in the country. And today, they are able to sell millions of phones, and then of course, controlling the Nigerian market and challenging the other big phone companies along the line. That is what Tony Ezigbo has been able to do. That's what Tony Ezigbo has been able to do. And that is the power of entrepreneurship. So let's go on and then look at the types of entrepreneurship. We have the builder, we have the innovator, we have the specialist, and then the opportunist. The builder believes in building massive empires and infrastructure. The innovator, of course, starts a business because he's driven by the passion for innovation. The specialist normally is a specialist and expert whose main drive is his expertise is what drives him more than anything else. Then, of course, the opportunist. This one sees an existing gap and then provide a business to fill that gap. Okay, it talks about the person with the water business, for example. That is what an opportunist does. Okay, let's look at it in more details. Okay, the whole concept of the types of entrepreneurs, 4 types of entrepreneurs that we saw, was derived from the work of Joe Abraham. He wrote the Entrepreneurial DNA, okay, where he identified 4 types of entrepreneurs. To Joe Abraham, all entrepreneurs are not wired the same way, okay, that all entrepreneurs have different DNAs. They have different things driving them, okay? They all cannot be the same. Some are builders, some are opportunists, and some are specialists, and some are innovators. That is how he identified them. The builder believes in building massive, building empires and infrastructure. Okay, they are driven to build highly scalable businesses and very fast. Typical example is given of South Korea, where you have companies building some of the largest businesses, empires, and infrastructure that you can think about. Massive companies like the Samsung, massive companies like the shipbuilding companies. Okay, these are basically driven by entrepreneurs in South Korea, and their vision is that kind of massive construction. Most of the massive ships that we see in the world today, okay, the luxury boats are basically built in South Korea. The Samsung industry, for example, is not just a phone company, but a highly technologically driven company with electronics, and then of course the smartphone company, the TV sector, and all of those things. That is what Samsung is all about. That is South Korea for you. Okay, the opportunists. This is a gap, existing gap, and then provides business to service that gap. Individuals wired with this DNA are highly optimistic master promoters. They enjoy marketing and selling. Okay, they sniff out where time, money making opportunities, jump in at the right time, ride the growth, and then jump off at his peak. People like Richard Branson, I'm sure you've heard of Richard Branson before. He's the owner of Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Records, Virgin Train, and the like. Okay, Richard Branson was also in Nigeria sometime. I'm sure you all remember Virgin Nigeria. He saw the gap. He saw the number of people that travel out of Nigeria. He saw the kind of money international airlines are making out of Nigeria. And then found that Nigeria does not have a national carrier. And they came into partner with Nigeria and setting up the Virgin Nigeria airline. But of course, after a few years, he had to pack up because of our tradition, because of our national ethos when it comes to doing business. Because the specialists This one packages skill and expertise into viable business. The specialist is very analytical, an expert who is averse to risk taking. People like Bill Gates fit into this. Bill Gates is, as we'll see, can see from now moving away from IT into medicine. When you hear Bill Gates talking today, you think he's a medical personnel, but no, it's his expertise, his analytical mind that is driving him around and taking up all manners of challenges along the way. Okay, he's a specialist, and that's the kind of thing that drives him. The innovator starts a business because of his passion for innovation. Innovators do something they love, and when the opportunity comes along, they take the way they take it. Okay, they measure their success on the impact of their products on services of humanity. They will tell you it's not for the money, that I'll do it for free for the rest of my life. Somebody like Mark Zuckerberg falls into this kind of group. Okay, he's the one that innovation is his main onion. He is driven by entrepreneurship, not so much because of the money, but the impact of his product, of his services on humanity, on mankind. That's what drives the innovator. So those are the 4 types of entrepreneurs that we have. But for our purpose here, we emphasize this because we ask the question, okay, that not all entrepreneurs are the same. Okay, which one are you? Are you able to identify the kind of entrepreneur that you are? Are you an innovator, an opportunist, a builder, or a specialist? What is your own DNA? Have you been able to identify your own DNA? What works for you? What works for you and those surrounding you? Okay, if you're able to identify the kind of thing that drives you as an entrepreneur, that is when you'll be able to know the kind of business that you go in for. You know the strategy to adopt. You know the team that you'll be able to put together to accomplish the goal you set out to do. Okay, so what works for one entrepreneur might not work for another one. Okay, what is it that works for you? What drives you? That's the question that we ask ourselves when we go into any entrepreneurial activity. And that is the challenge I'm going to give all of you today. And then, of course, ask you, what is it that drives you? Okay, what is it that drives you? Okay, is it innovation? Is it opportunity? Is it as a specialist? And what kind of business are you going to set up? And the strategy that you adopt, and then the kind of people that you surround yourself with. Okay, so that is the 4 types of entrepreneurship that we have. All right. Now let's look at the types of businesses. Excuse me. The type of businesses. There are several types of businesses that an entrepreneur can consider in Nigeria, in fact, across the world too. Okay, so a simple talent or passion can trigger off a business, and that can be a means of livelihood for an entrepreneur. So let's look at the various types of businesses that we have today in the country. Yeah, there are quite many, and of course we're familiar with it, and I'm sure all of us will fall into one of these. Is it the fashion industry? The fashion, we know how massive the fashion industry is becoming in Nigeria today. We see it on a day-to-day basis. Each time each time we see it, we see it in when we have weddings, we have occasions, we see the fashion sense in Nigeria, and it's a massive industry that is growing. Then farming, of course, we talked about agriculture and farming, and then the entire agricultural value chain, then small scale manufacturing, SMEs, the catering industry, buying and selling. This program does not support buying and selling, essentially, but if you're buying something to add value, okay, definitely the bank will support you in that area. Event management, animal husbandry, trying to see how we can reduce the incidences of other farmers' clashes. So animal husbandry is being promoted substantially so that people are able to keep their animals in one location instead of roaming the forests and bushes with it and then generating all manners of conflict with those who are farming the land. Okay, school businesses, daycare, nursery, hospitality, and eateries, restaurants, digital currency, investment, photography, publishing, dry cleaning, cosmetic, beauty, and health services. All these various businesses that people can consider going into. Then vocational skills. for consideration. This could be in the areas of electrician, plumbing, carpentry, masonry. Okay, all these various businesses that vocational skills that people can seek to access. One of the challenges that we have in Nigeria today is that not many of our people are going into vocational skills. Okay, in a place like Abuja, I keep giving this example that Abuja will be a city under construction for the next 50 years. But what we find in most of the construction sites today is that most of the people who are providing the skills, the labor, okay, the electricians, the plumbers, carpenters, and the masons, most of them are not Nigerians. Okay, most of them are not Nigerians. Most of them have come up from the West Coast, places like Benin Republic, Togo, are walking the streets, doing nothing, doing menial jobs like pushing the, carrying shoe shine boxes around the place, little scissors for basic challenges, and we need to do something about that. Okay, so members will be encouraged to consider the possibility of setting skills institution where they can develop and generate the kind of vocational skills that we require in this country today. Okay, because there definitely is a dearth of country, and then because vocational skills of business. Right. Things to consider before going into a business. Remember, we talked about business. There are various skills. There are various things that you need to consider. You don't just because somebody is doing A, B, C, D, you also that line of business. Okay, there are things that you need to consider. There are things that you need to do before you go into that line of business. Okay, is there a demand for the business? Okay, is there a demand for the business? Many businesses fail simply because the entrepreneur sets up a business and that's sold products and services people don't need. Okay, so you have to find out whether there's a need for that business in the first place. Okay. I've talked about the water business, for example. You ask the question: do people actually need that line of business? Or the bakery, for example, where within the community you find yourself there's no bakery and people have to bring in bread from far off. Okay, do people need the bread, the bakery in that community? That is a question that you need to ask. Okay, you have to find out whether people need it. Others set up a business that produce or sell products and services that people want but could not afford. So for the water business, for example, do people want that potable drinking water, sachet water, and bottled water, but they cannot afford it? Okay, so you are not solving their problem. Okay, so if you set up a business that people cannot afford, that means, of course, you'll not be able to sell and you'll not be able to break even. Okay, because maybe in trying to set up that borehole business, you find that there's a heavy crust of rock underneath the surface, and assessing that the water level becomes a challenge. So that when you succeed in building that the business up, you now have to sell in such a way as to be able to make your own money. Okay, and in making that money, you have to sell at an exorbitant price, and of course, people will now not be able to afford it. So there is always a challenge there. So you need to do your survey to find out if people, if that business that you want to initiate is actually in demand and people can afford it, and whether the product is something that people actually need. So you need to ask the question: are there other people doing similar business, or are you bringing something new? If you are starting a business in an area where the market is already saturated, the business might fail, as you may find you are struggling just to keep up with the competition. Okay, so it's important that you do some research to find out areas where the competition is not properly serving the customer, and then position your business to fill that gap. So it's important that you ask the question. Okay, are there other people doing that business? If there are people doing that business and you want to come in with such a business again, are you going to bring something new to the table? Are you coming to do something differently? Or are you just coming to just join the bandwagon? If you are just coming to join the bandwagon, then you are likely to fail. But if you are going to come and then bring in new innovation, bring in new ways of doing things, then of course you might be able to succeed. Okay, so if you are starting a business in an area where the market is saturated, okay, and then of course you are not bringing in something new, the likelihood of you failing is there. Okay, so it's important that you do your research, okay, to find out where the competition is not properly serving people. So if that line of business is available, but then the existing business is not satisfying people properly, then of course you can come in to fill that gap, that area that is not being fully satisfied. Okay, so make sure that whatever you are bringing, okay, as an entrepreneur, we have to work hard to differentiate your product and bring in something different to what is in the market currently. That is called your unique selling point or your unique selling proposition. Okay, I like to give this example of the popular pig milk in the country today. Pig milk used to dominate the Nigerian market. It came in a small can and then of course liquid form. Okay, I was selling at that point at that time for 50 naira per can. Okay, and then other people suddenly, of course, it dominated the market, and nobody thought that anybody could break the monopoly of pig milk in the Nigerian market. But then 3 Crown came into the market, and what it did was to come with sachet milk, powdered sachet milk. Okay, so instead of selling at the exorbitant rate of 15 naira per sachet, here it was able to bring it down to 10 naira per sachet. Why? It was not producing can, and of course, it was not producing in liquid form. It was powdered form, which means you can use and reuse, okay? Which means one individual can use it in more than 2 cups. You can use half of it and then fold it and keep. But the tin milk, of course, if you are not able to refrigerate it, the chances that by the next day it will spoil was high. So Crown milk came in with an entirely new innovation, something new, a unique selling point, a sachet, powder, and then it made the difference from the existing pig milk that was in the can, and then it was liquid. So whatever it is that you are doing, find out what makes your business stand out, okay? What makes your business stand out within the existing market competitors. That is the one way you can be able to survive as an enterprise, okay? All right, things to consider before going into business. Determine what needs are out there. You need to determine what needs are out there. What businesses exist to satisfy those needs? Okay, if there's no business currently satisfying those needs, it could be that no one has thought about it. Okay, like the water business or borehole business I told you about. Okay, if there's no company supplying potable drinking water either in sachet or bottle, then of course maybe no business has thought about it. Okay, or maybe there's not enough market to make up setting up that business viable. Okay, you could be within that environment, within that community, but the market might not be large enough to be able to absorb that line of supplying the sachet water. Okay, or the cost of carrying out the business in that environment could be too expensive. I'll just give you the example of how you are able to access the water table. Maybe the cost of digging the borehole, okay, could be too expensive that by the time you begin to produce, the products, the output, the service becomes too expensive. So these are things that you need to find out. These are things you need to determine before you go into that line of business, okay? Why is it that no business is there to satisfy that need, okay? What is the quality and then the level of the market? Is it big enough to be able to absorb your produce, okay? And then what's the cost of doing business within that environment? If it's too expensive, then of course there could be some challenge for you there, okay? So how do you determine what needs are there? Okay? You have to determine what needs are there, but then how do you determine what the needs are? First, you have to ask questions. You'll be surprised what you find out about people's feeling when you ask questions. Okay, you don't just go into a line of business and then begin to roll out your business produce. You need to find out the cost of. You need to find out what people actually need within that environment. Okay, so you need to, what you need to do is to see how you can be able to, please check and then admit something. So you need to ask the question and you need to find out what people need. Okay, then administer simple questionnaire. You need to maybe develop some simple questionnaire which you administer amongst the people, and the responses that you get will help you with respect to what the people's needs are, and then you try to fill that need. Then use social media. Social media is one of the fastest means of communication that we have in the world today. And of course, it manifests also in Nigeria. We see the way young men use social media, able to convey their ideas around either the Facebook, the Instagram, the WhatsApp platforms, and all of that. Information spreading out within minutes, within hours, the moment one individual posts it. Before you know what's happening, it has gone around and come back to you. So that is something that you need to look at, and it's very, very important that you use those kind of medium. Then read journals and online sites. Those ones give you free information. Gates, for example, and Steve Jobs, they all went into the line of business they went on account of the observing what obtains within their community, within their society. So that's something that you need to be cautious about and need to look at. Okay, all right. All right. So now we're starting our slow journey to the end. Main barriers to starting a business. What are the barriers to starting a business? Okay, as I said earlier, anything that we do in life definitely has its own challenges, has some hurdles that you might confront, some barriers. Okay, so if you want to start a business, there is every likelihood that you are likely to run into some barriers. So what are these barriers? What are these challenges? What are these things that problems that you might encounter when you go into want to start a business? Okay, let's look at the barriers, the main barriers that you face. Money. Money is one of the most vital resource an entrepreneur needs to start a business, and probably the most critical barrier of starting a small business. That is why all of us are on this program today, because we need the money to be able to start our business. So it is a vital resource, and then it is a critical barrier. So exactly how much do you need to start, and where do you get it from? How much do you need? Where do you get it from? These are the things that you need to consider when you are going into business. Money is not easy to come by, and that is what the Agnes Law Scheme is all about, providing you the assets, the source of funding for you to start your own business. But ordinarily, it's a major source of barrier to starting a business. Lack of knowledge. In some cases, many small businesses fail, not for lack of capital, not for lack of money, but because the entrepreneurs had little knowledge of the business. Okay, that's why we say before you start any business, you have to know what the business is all about. Don't because Mr. A is doing it, then you think that you can also do it. No, it doesn't work that way. You need to have enough knowledge about that line of business. You need to study it very, very well. You need to know the areas of strength and weaknesses. Okay, you need to know the things that the season the business tries, the time the business tries, and all of those things. These are important and key areas that you have to have an idea about. Okay, so when are the peak periods and low season of your business? Some businesses have low periods, they have peak periods. If you are into agriculture, for example, and you want to go into tomato farming, you need to know the peak periods, and you need to know the low periods. Because you could go into farming tomato, for example, and then you could be going in at the wrong time, when the yield will be low. Okay, that is the major challenge. Okay, and even in the peak period, if it's the peak period, of course, the competition will be very, very steep. And then, of course, you need to know the kind of storage facilities you are going to have, because it's the market. Are there off-takers? Is the market there, readily available for you to be able to produce and sell? If it's not there, you might run into the problem of losing what you have produced because there are no people to buy it up. So today we go to some markets across the country today. You go to Lagos, my third market in Lagos, for example, you find baskets and baskets of tomato rotting away because they've come into the market at the wrong time. It's so saturated. So you need to know when to produce at that kind of massive scale and when not to. Okay, we need to be familiar with certain changes within the environment, the government policies, the taxes. Okay, policies of government keeps changing on a regular basis. So we need to keep tabs. We need to have feelers. We need to have insiders who will be able to advise us on the way to go. These are things that we need to look at and things we have to work on when we go into any line of business. Today you are into maize farming because government has banned the importation of maize, and then of course there is a vast market for you to fill. Then suddenly government changes its policy. Okay, and says, we're now going to open the market to import maize. Meanwhile, you have invested heavily in maize farming. So what do? That's the research experience people have. Okay, people who are concentrating on maize farming, then suddenly government changed the policy and said they were going to import maize. And meanwhile, people had borrowed a lot of money, invested in maize farming, while they were still expecting the harvesting and sale to recoup their money. Government opened up the market, and then all manners of importation started coming in. And then, of course, all manners of losses stared them in the face. So these are things that we need to be very cautious of. In areas of taxes, we are familiar with the issue of VAT, for example. VAT that was 5% recently. Suddenly, government came up and changed it to 7.5%. Okay, stamp duty of 5%, now is 6%. So all these are areas that you need to be very, very cautious about. Okay, will the business be able to generate cash immediately, or you have to sell on credit? These again are areas that you have to be very, very cautious about. Okay, if you build a business on selling on credit, you are going to run into this problem, because we've seen the experiences of many who have bought businesses, who are running their business on credit basis, and today they are all agonizing and virtually gone out of the market because people have bought on credit and they are not paying. Meanwhile, they are using those items, they are using the services virtually without paying. Okay, people who trade, for example, in materials and stuff like that have always had these kind of challenges. So your business should be built on something that generates cash on a daily basis, on a month, as frequently as possible, not one that sells on credit. Are the products perishable? I've just given the example of tomato. How long does it take to produce your goods? And will it affect your ability to meet your customers' needs? If your produce takes a long time to produce, then of course you might run into problem with your customers who might need those orders on a regular basis forthrightly. But if you have to take a long time, then of course there might be some challenge for you in that area. So you need to be very, very cautious. You need to know how long it takes you to produce your product. And then of course, if you have ready customers, that will be able to take them up each time the issue comes up. Determination. Another major barrier in starting a small business is determination. You have to develop the courage of a bulldog and then maintain the determination that will enable you to smash through obstacles as there will be many along the way. You need determination to keep your focus, pick up when you fail or face rejection, and to continue to look for new solutions and strategies to make a business succeed. This is very, very important. Determination is very, very key, okay? Because without determination, as we say, you are bound to run into some challenges or obstacles. And if you don't have that determination and you give up easily, then of course you know that there's going to be a problem. Okay? Anything that you do that you give up readily and easily, of course you are bound to have some kind of problem. So you need to be determined. You have to come like a bulldog. Okay? You might face rejection. You might fail. But even if you fail, your ability to stand up, finding new solutions and strategies, that's the best way to go about it. Because anything short of that, you are going to have some major challenges along the way. Determination is key and very, very important. Okay? Fear, our greatest enemy. Fear is one of the greatest barriers to people starting a business. The question people really ask is, what if I fail? What if I make a fool of myself? What if I'm rejected? And people say no. So what? So what if you fail? You won't be the first person. So what if you make a fool of yourself? You won't be the first person. It's yourself anyway. What if I'm rejected? And people say no. Fine. You find another set of people that might accept you. You pick up yourself and change your strategies and change your ways of doing things and move on. Fear is one of our greatest problems in Africa, I keep saying. Okay? We have not been able to overcome our fear. The Western world has overcome its fear. That's why it's able to take somebody to the moon. As far back as 1967, they've been able to place human beings on the moon. But we in Africa, in Nigeria, are still scared, afraid of the dark. We have not been able to go beyond ourselves. I give the example of the Zuma Rock here in Abuja. Nigerians have all manners of superstition around it. Nobody dares go near it because of all manners of superstition. There is a hotel that was built just right beside it with the thinking of making it a tourist spot where people will come and lodge and they try to climb the hill, the mountain. But today, that hotel has never been moved into. It's in ruins. Not a day has anybody stayed in it. Meanwhile, it had been built, provided for, furnished, and all that. but our superstition and fear has not allowed people to go in to stay in that hotel. But just a few years ago, some Europeans came from Europe, from Americas, and climbed out that Zuma rock. Okay? These are people who have overcome fear. We haven't been able to overcome fear. Until we're able to overcome fear, we will not be able to accomplish much in the world. And that is the problem of the black hole. Okay? The fear of the unknown, the fear of tomorrow, the fear of the dark. And if you are going to be major entrepreneurs, major accomplishers, innovators in this world, we definitely have to be ready to take the risk, be determined, and then, of course, overcome the fear that comes with it. Okay, people like Bill Gates, I've given you an example of him, how he was rejected by IBM, but he stood up. Okay, he picked his Microsoft software and his dream of microcomputers and moved on. Today, we are the better for it. Thomas Edison, for example, who created the electric bulb, had similar challenges. He failed more than 10 times until determination and with collaboration with others, he was able to develop the filament today that sustains the energy in the bulb. Honda, for example, in Japan was also rejected. When he was starting his Honda cars, people laughed, Japanese laughed at him. Today, Honda is one of the major automobile company in the world today. The Wright brothers, I've given the example of the Wright brothers. Okay, they were rejected, they were laughed at. But today, we are beneficiaries of that, flying all over the world because of the vision of the Wright brothers. All right? So lack of support is another main barrier to starting a business. Lack of support. Many small businesses lack support in the critical areas they need, the areas of funding. Few financiers are willing to support them. You could see some wealthy relation and friend and all of that. You approach them and then they tell you, sorry, I don't have the money. But of course, their outlook doesn't show that they don't have the money. You see them changing cars, increasing them, building new houses and property, acquiring new property. But when you approach them and say you need finances to start your business, of course, you'll be disappointed. Okay? So these are lack of support is a major barrier to people who want to start their business. Legal and regulatory support. Difficulty in fulfilling registration requirement for companies. We'll be looking at this in much details in the next few days, by next tomorrow or so. When we'll be looking at business law and then the areas of registration and then compliance requirement in doing business in Nigeria. They've talked so much about the ease of doing business and the singular fact that Nigeria has a complicated means of registering business, running business, doing business, and then the expectations in running businesses, the various criteria, the various things that you need to do to be able to do business in Nigeria today. If you're a businessman today, apart from the challenge with FIRS, the taxes, okay, you have that with the PENCOM, you have with NSITF, you have with ITF, you have with all manners of organizations that come up and throw things at you, okay? Financial Reporting Council, they throw all manners of regulations at you that you have to fulfill to be able to access any business. That is a major challenge that we have in the area of support. Okay, we'll be looking at that in more details in the next few days. Staying power. Staying power is like determination, okay? Most entrepreneurs lack the staying power or the determination. Okay, the moment they encounter a few challenges, they simply give up. Okay, if you want to be an entrepreneur, what you really want to do to go into business is to try and stay the course. Never give up. Okay, be patient. Entrepreneurship is not a quick reach strategy. Like I say, it's not a 100-meter dash. It's a marathon. You're bound to face these challenges along the way, but your ability to stay in, to hang in there, your determination, okay, to persevere when you are rejected, to turn your face and move on. When you fail, to try again, as Thomas Edison did. That is the only way you can be able to succeed as an entrepreneur. It's a long haul, not a short race. Okay. All right. So now we're on the final topic. The final topic in our outline, that's sources of funding. What are the sources of funding for small businesses? Because we know why we are taking this course today, okay? It is one of the reasons why we're taking the course today, sources of funding, a source of funding for businesses. The what you call it, the missing middle, as we talked about, okay? So these are the sources of funding: equity, loans, grants, cooperative loans, and then crowding crowdfunding. So let's look at it in more details. Equity. Equity is an investment. It's an investment made in the shares of a business. It is made with the understanding that the investor will get a return on their investment and appreciation on the capital that they have invested. So basically, that's what equity is: investment in shares. Okay, we hear of companies doing IPOs. Okay, international placement, where people come in and then buy shares in that company to generate the funds for them to be able to invest in that line of business. And as the business begins to grow and then becomes profitable, then of course those who have invested will begin to drive the dividends of that investment with the share with the shares that they are paid at the end of every operating as it is more long-term in nature and gives the entrepreneur time for the business to take root. So when you do placement in the stock market, for example, and then people invest, you can be sure as an entrepreneur that you will have the time to be able to invest and do your business until such a time that the business is firmly rooted and then it becomes now profitable. That's when people will now begin, those who invested will begin to reap the fruits of their investment. Okay, so at least the entrepreneur has the opportunity of nurturing the business very well, running the business very well, and make it profitable. So that is the advantage that you have in equity. Okay, equity is derived from savings, from partners, from investors, from families. Savings, of course, is a major source of funding for most enterprises. Okay, we know the challenge that people have with savings because of the limited resources, the little resources that we have. If it's from our salaries, it's not easy to save. Okay, monies we find, and most times we say, the money is not even enough to want to sustain yourself. So how much more can I be able to save? But it is important that you are able to save some money. Okay, it takes a lot of effort, discipline, and sacrifice to be able to put some money aside. But it's important that we develop that discipline. It's important that we develop that sacrifice. So no matter what you earn, even if you're on a minimum wage, you're able to set aside at least 5,000 monthly, at least it goes into something else. With that, you could use that as a collateral for something for other major investment that will come. So saving is a critical source of equity for you to buy equity or invest in a company. Okay, partners could also bring in their own savings as equity in the business. If you have partners, you have people of common mind, of course, you tell them the line of business you are going into, and then they'll be able to bring in their own savings to contribute so that you are able to start your business. Okay, I've seen so many young men come together trying to do things like that. An investor is a person who puts funds into something in order to get a return. Okay, we talked about that. That's what we find in equity. People who invest, who put an IPO, people who invest, who see how viable that line of business is, and then they come in and put in their money. These are investors. There is this particular one we call the angel investors. These are wealthy private individuals, okay, who invest in businesses in exchange for some equity. Most angel investors, mostly really, they are people who have substantial amount of money on them, and then of course enough to spare, and then they come with the intention mostly of mentoring the young entrepreneurs, providing them with the money, mentoring them, guiding them, because they have also tried it and they are successful in their own line of business. So they come, provide that kind of seed money for you, and then support you and help in guiding you along to how to run that business. And of course, as the business becomes profitable, then of course they'll be able to gain their own returns in terms of the equity investment, in terms of the investment they have made. They will not begin to draw dividends. Partners, we've looked at partners already. Family and friends. Most times, really, for people who are going into business, and that is a common experience amongst most people, we find that family and friends are usually the first sources of investment for most young startups, most young startup businesses. Okay, most of them, the first set of people that you approach are your family members, your father and your mother and all of that, and then your brothers and then your sisters within the family. They are the first set of people you approach for money and say, look, I have this business idea I want to go into. Can you come and support it? And then, of course, friends are also another source of, major source of investment for most young people. You know, I've had that experience, and I know have my kids who have come approaching me for money. Daddy, I want to go into this line of business. I need some support. I know how much you are going to invest in it. Nothing much has come of it, but at least you try to encourage them so that they also give it a try and see whether they'll be able to make anything out of it. But it's very important that we note that these are areas that we can always be able to reach out and source for money. Loans. Okay, so why are we in this program now? Because we need loans. Okay, a business loan is money given to an entrepreneur to finance the purchase of an asset or fund business's recurrent expenditure. Okay, so we need loans. That's why we're attending this training program today. Okay, and then the loans, of course, is the IGNIS loan scheme. A loan can either be interest bearing or non-interest bearing. In the former, the borrower and the lender agree on a rate. Okay, the loan is tenured for a specific period. At the end of the tenure or at maturity, the borrower must repay the loan to the lender together with the interest that has accrued. Okay, so loans are interest bearing and or non-interest bearing. The non-interest bearing loans are those which are given out by the Islamic banking services today. Well, banks like the Jaiz Bank, like the Taj Bank today, who are into no-interest banking system based on the Islamic principles of finances, financial principles. Okay, it's peculiar to the Islamic system. They don't assign any interest to their loans, but then they have a way in which if there's a default, they have a way of recovering it, and if they are profit, they have a profit sharing mechanism, and that is why the banks are able to sustain today. They are not just there for free. Okay, so they have a way of earning their own income. Okay, but the interest-bearing loans, which is what we are trying to assess today, is tenure. Okay, both the borrower and the lender, they agree on the rate. Okay, we say it's 5% interest rate today. It's tenure, the 7 years tenure. Okay, there's 1 year moratorium. Okay, and then at the end of that 7 years, you're expected to pay back the loan, and then with the interest that accrues to it. So that is how that aspect of the loan is factored. Okay, interest bearing and non-interest bearing. Okay, the IGNIS loan scheme today is interest bearing, and that is what it entails. So, what are the sources of loans? Banks take in money from depositors and lend at margin to creditors. Microfinance banks, commercial banks, all these are banks that give out loans. Okay, partners also could give you loans. Okay, partners are also sources of loans. We have partners who we invite and come into our business. Then they are able to give you loan to run your business, and then of course we at an interest. Okay, interest normally are usually friendly coming from partners like that. Then grants are another source of funding. Grants are funds given to small businesses by donor organizations. Usually the donor does not retain any interest in the business. However, to ensure that the money is actually being used for the purpose intended, the donor will set up processes to ensure that the project is properly utilized. Donor organizations are usually predisposed to giving grants to small businesses who are involved in social enterprises. Okay, so grants are unlike loans because there are no interest tied to it. Most of the donors provide these loans because they believe in the cause that the person they are supporting is trying to champion. And most of it are tied to social. Okay, most times the donor agencies it's not directly involved in the management of the organization, but they're able to provide some measure of support. In fact, some do not even give you cash; they provide you materials, okay, or help you set up the equipment that you require in managing that line of business. Okay, what they are intent on doing, their only intention is to see that you are able to provide those services that you set out to do. Okay, grants are given by government organizations, development partners, family trusts, non-for-profit organizations, wealthy individuals. We have popular donor agencies like the DFID, the USAID, faith-based organizations who are there providing some of those kind of services to people who they recognize as needing them. Okay, sources of grants in Nigeria, we have Sweden, we have the DFID, which I just mentioned, Shell Life Wire Fund. Shell Life Wire Fund is owned by the Shell International Development, Shell Development Company. That's an international oil company that operates mostly in the Niger Delta area across the country. And what they have done is to set up this Live Wire Fund, which gives a grant to young men and women in the Niger Delta area to help them start their own businesses. Okay, help them start and grow their own businesses, to be able to bring in their friends and relations into those line of businesses, take them away from militancy and all this kind of untoward activities that's going on in the riverine area, polluting the environment, building up local refineries in the creeks, and then damaging the ecosystem of that environment. So that is Shell's target, providing those kind of soft grants to people to try and see how they'll be able to pull them out from areas of militancy and rebellious activities across the board. Okay, we have the Tiwa Anjuma Foundation that is also doing a whole lot of work, especially with this volunteer support unit, which is operating in the Northeast zone, supporting the IDPs, and then the government providing all manners of support, and then school system, building schools, hospitals, and things like that in the Northeast region that has been devastated by the war in the last decade or thereabout. Okay, Bank of Industry, MTN Foundation, all these organizations have grants, give out grants to Nigeria manners of businesses. Cooperative loans. Cooperative loans, a cooperative society, cooperative loans are very, very popular because almost every organization you go in Nigeria today has a cooperative society. And a cooperative society is an independent group of people who come together in most of these organizations to form a cooperative society. And they come with the intention of mobilizing funds which they generate from the salaries of their members for purposes of carrying out one activity or the other. Okay, the cooperative will come together and decide to use the money they've gathered from their members to buy land, for example, and then sell to their members, or to buy food items and sell to their members at subsidized rate, or to give loans to their members and then for them to start their own businesses. And in most organizations, that has been a major source of money for rent for their members. Some borrow to buy cars, some to pay school fees, and then some to start small businesses. So that is where cooperative society has been very, very important and influential in Nigeria. In fact, a whole concept of cooperative society started in the Western Nigeria. And at a point, one of the oldest cooperative societies multi-purposed to become a major bank in the country until recently, of course, merged with several other banks in the course of all this merger, and then the cooperative society disappeared. But their shares are still being held in some of those banks that it merged with. Okay. Crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a new concept, and then, of course, it's internet-based. Okay, it's a process of raising funds from individuals through the internet. The entrepreneur approaches individuals through a recognized platform, internet platform, or is it your Facebook, is it your Instagram page, and the rest of those social media platforms, and then makes a pitch about their products or business. The individuals send money either for a reward or for a return. What crowdfunding does actually is that individuals who have a marketing idea, products to market, and then they float it on the internet and they invite people to either come in and buy those products or contribute towards the development of that product. Okay, crowdfunding has seen the emergence of so many successful businesses today. Businesses like the Forever products, they started as crowdfunding projects. Okay, we have some of those projects like the ones revolving around funding hotels, for example, that is very, very popular in UAE. Okay, and then of course organizations like Alliance company, which deals with, it's a Filipino-based company and it's very, very popular in Nigeria today, with so many people buying into that concept. They have products, they have services which they sell, and then the participants are able to bring downlines who they introduce and buy their products and things like that. And then, of course, they are able to generate a whole lot of money, and you see them investing in a whole lot of things. And then, of course, those who are doing so well, they are also compensated by being sent on holidays across the world. They give them cars and all of those just to encourage it. That's what crowdfunding does for you. And that is a major source of funds for small businesses. Those who are able to persevere in that area, who are determined and who remain resolute, are able to generate the money they require in that area to fund their business. Right. Okay, so we've come to the end of this paper. Thank you very much. So it's time for Q&A. Appreciate you spending the time for us. The time is well spent. I started around 11. It took us like 2 hours to go through this paper. It's quite a lengthy paper. We'll try and see how we'll be able to work on it going forward. So thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you for spending the day with us. We'll now open the floor as we did previously, so that if there are any questions, then we'll take the questions, and then so that we'll be able to close for the day. I know it's a busy day for all of us, and then so that people can go about their other businesses. All right, thank you very, very much. So open the floor now, and then you can unmute your mic, and then if you have anything, any question you want to ask, you can ask the question so that we can tidy up and then move on. Thank you. Can you open the floor, sir? Okay, you can all unmute your mic now. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask the questions. All right, Techno 904.
Hello.
Yeah, all right, Techno. Can you hear you?
Hey, I'm Andrew.
Are you speaking with us, Mr. Techno 904? Mr. Techno, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you, sir.
All right, I can hear you speaking your language to somebody else.
Yes, I sent somebody to pick my child from school because of the class, and they are refusing to give out the child.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you have a question?
Yes, the issue is the challenge of not being able to hear you all this while. We were discussing, but I cannot actually get the sound at all. I was even surprised that the sound is up now, that I can now hear you.
It means you didn't handle your device very well.
Yeah?
Which means you didn't handle your device very well.
No, I didn't even get it at all. I was only taking the lecture note. I could not get the voice at all.
All right. You didn't check the YouTube?
I don't know whether I can access it yet. How will I access it, sir?
Okay, there will be a link on the platform, so you can go ahead and access it.
Sir?
There is a link. There's a link on the platform. There's a link on the platform. Yeah, so you can go ahead and listen to it.
Okay.
Who am I speaking with anyway? Because your name is not on the.
You are speaking with Ode Emmanuel.
Okay, Ode Emmanuel. All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right.
Are we done for today?
Yes, we are done for today.
Are we done for today?
We are, if we finish checking the questions from others. We are still discussing. Others are asking questions, yeah, but we are rounding up soon. Any other questions?
Sir. I pray I will be able to. No, I pray I will be able to access the. I pray I will be able to access the YouTube so that I can listen to it.
You can.
Thank you so much.
Will. All right, welcome.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
For now,
yeah.
For now, there is no questions, sir.
Okay, I'm asking others now.
Sir?
I'm asking others now. There are others in the class. Yeah. All right.
All right, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right. Toluhi, any questions? Toluhi. Augustine Anthony. Augustine Anthony. You have any questions? Augustine Anthony.
No,
Yeah.
I'm clear. I'm clear.
You are clear. All right. Okay. Luchis Travels. Luchis Travels. Zara, how are you? Talk to us. You have any question? Unmute your mic. No, sir. All right. Don't want us to hear your voice. All right, Zara. Okay. All right. Christopher, any question? Mr. Jekario, is there any questions, sir? Chinda Zekario. Come mute your mic. Any questions? Anything you need clarification?
No, you know, it's a very interesting topic. As I said earlier, yes. I understand very well.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So if there are no questions, I think the day is fast spent. We'll close for the day. We'll converge again tomorrow. Tomorrow we might. My colleague who should be taking the paper, he is attending another program in Kaduna. Might be joining us from Kaduna. If he's not able to join us in the morning to take the paper in the morning, I will take my second paper because I have two papers. I normally take that paper towards the end of the week, but I will be traveling towards the end of the week, so I might have to take that paper a little bit earlier. So you might be seeing me tomorrow to take the paper in the morning. That's if my colleague is not taking it. But if I take it, my colleague will definitely be with you between 4 and 6 to take his own paper. We'll arrange it so that we have a paper in the evening. We don't normally do evening papers, but because of the peculiar situation we find ourselves this week, we might have to do that tomorrow. So we'll see how it goes. We'll reconvene again by 10 in the morning. If my colleague is not able to take the paper by 10 in the morning, then you will see me again, and then he will come in the evening. So having said that, let me thank you once again for spending your day with us. It's been a pleasure having you with us. And then I thank you immensely, and then look forward to seeing you tomorrow again. All right, have a wonderful day ahead of you. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Right.